picking sides. Black Panther himself, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chadwick Boseman.
Wakanda Forever!
We begin tonight with the sudden and very tragic death sending shockwaves across the country. Actor Chadwick Boseman died at the age of 43 following a private 4-year battle with colon cancer.
You moving forward, and what is it like having to balance loyalty to a fan base and to a performer as regal and elegant as Chadwick Boseman, along with the future of that franchise, that character, and of Wakanda?
Is that you see T'Challa in our? I'm not hedging my bets. I'm being quite honest. T'Challa is. You will not see T'Challa in the MCU 616 universe.
Above all, it is a relationship movie. We'll have some incredible set pieces. But at the end of the day, I think what people are going to really remember is the conversations. How do you move forward after losing someone that meant so much to you?
What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. This is MovieFiles, and my name is Elliot, and today we are here to discuss Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, a film I got the opportunity to see in theaters in IMAX last night, and I had to sleep on it. I took down some notes, and here we are discussing it in my spoiler-free review. But before we get into today's review, if you all haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell. That way you can stay up to date with all my daily content. You can also give your boy a follow on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. All those links can be found in the description of this very video. Which, speaking of this video, if you stuck around to the end and if you enjoyed yourself today, make sure you hit that thumbs up, make sure you hit that share button, but more importantly, leave your thoughts on the film in the comments below. I'm talking pros and cons, favorite moments, favorite characters, things that didn't work for you all. And since we're talking MCU and the end of Phase 4, where does Wakanda Forever rank amongst the other films in this very phase? And we're talking, what, 29, 30 films in the MCU? Where does this film rank amongst those other movies? And we're talking about a sequel here. 2018's Black Panther versus this one. Which one did you prefer? Let's have those discussions in the comments below. So, just getting into my thoughts before we get into the breakdown as far as expectations. So I fully support the recast T'Challa movement, and I don't want to get into all the details here. I have a 30-minute plus long video on my reasonings, and also shout out to my man E-Man from E-Man Movie Reviews. You can check out his websites to really get an understanding of why we feel the way we do. And again, putting aside the toxicity online and Twitter and people putting their agenda in this movement, I don't stand behind them. I stand behind exactly what E-Man is talking about in my own personal reasons, which again, check out the website, check out my video that I made, and I'm going to put that in the description of this video. So with that being said, I also have been seeing the interviews. I've been reading the interviews in the last few weeks and even, in the last few months with Ryan Coogler and Nate Moore and the cast and crew expressing what this film meant to them. So I understand all that, and it is what it is at this point, right? The movie's out. With all of that being said, as a critic, as a movie reviewer, as someone you all visit to hear my thoughts on, I have always been the type of moviegoer where I have my expectations, I have my excitement, my nervousness, my anxiety going into movies, and as soon as I walk at that front door to theater, it all goes out the back seat, right? I walk into the theater, clear mind, and I'm just going to sit there and see what they're going to give us. With that being said, I'm going to share my thoughts with you all on this film. No spoilers whatsoever. Let's start off with the pros. And I think I want to get out the obvious things, right? And that is from the behind the scenes, incredible talent. Number one, go ahead and give Ruth E. Carter another Oscar because the costuming was fantastic, especially when you infuse a new Telecon and their design and their look. The costuming, the hair and makeup is just next to none. It's next level. I really appreciated that aspect, as well as just the production value as a whole. much bigger this time around, especially if a lot of you all might know or may not know. When it came to 2018's Black Panther, unfortunately, there were some budget restrictions, and a lot of people's complaint with that film, one of the biggest complaints was the third act, and the CGI wasn't as clean or as stellar as the first two acts. So this time around, for me, that was not the case. The visual effects were absolutely stunning, so clean, so gorgeous. The cinematography was great, and you can tell they took their time with this film, and understanding some of the visual effects artists that came out this past year talking about how Marvel's put the pressure on them, get this out by a certain date. You can tell that they cooked this. This was well done when it comes to the visual effects and the CGI, and just really making sure they gave us something spectacular to wrap up this phase 4. So getting that out of the way, also, I'm a big fan of great scores. I got to bring up my man Chadwick, who's one of my favorite composers. I felt like this was top notch. You can hear some of the familiar beats from the first Black Panther infused with some new elements, and especially with Tenoch and Namor's score, very kind of Godzilla score whenever he was on screen. So I did appreciate not only the score but also the soundtrack, which I haven't listened to in full, but I will this coming weekend. But I thought that element of the film was really well done. I will say I prefer the score in the first Black Panther, but I appreciated what Chadwick did with this one. Transitioning into that put the film together, that wrote the film, and more importantly directed the film. I'm talking about my man Ryan Coogler, who he reminded me in this film why he's one of the best directors doing it in the game today. Now, I will say, you can tell that there was a lot of pressure on him, obviously, from losing Chadwick Boseman, but I felt like he did a solid job in putting the pieces together. Now, we're going to talk about some of the stuff that didn't work for me in regards to his writing and some of the creative decisions, but at the end of the day, Ryan Coogler is still one of the best directors working in Hollywood. Now, let's get into these performances, man. We talked about behind the scenes. Let's talk about in front of the camera. I'm going to say this first. I personally believe, after seeing this film now, that everyone involved, again, behind the camera and also in front of the camera, they put their heart in this film. They put their soul in this film. They led with their heart. And you could tell that every actor wanted to bring their A game. This meant a lot to them. You can tell they were making this with heavy hearts, especially if you've seen some of those interviews with losing Chadwick Boseman. So I won't list off every single performance, but I do want to highlight some of the standouts for me. And I want to start off with the Queen Mother herself of Wakanda, played by the legend, the incredible Angela Bassett. And when I say you felt every word she spoke, every time she was on screen, I know that everyone on set just stopped what they were doing to watch what she was doing, because that's what type of performance she gives us in this film. Her performance was beyond brilliant and breathtaking, as she has to keep it all together after losing everything, all while being the queen of Wakanda, being a mother to Shuri, and just all the stuff that Angela Bassett gives us in this film. Give her all the praise, because she was just so amazing in this movie, and I can't thank her enough. Moving on to another standout here, and I'm going to be honest with you all in saying this. This person that I'm going to talk about now, for me, stole the movie. To the king of Tenoch, who call him Kukulkan, a.k.a. Namor. I am talking about my man, Tenoch Huerta, who I've only seen previously in one film, which was The Purge Forever. And I know people say that he was great in Narcos, but as far as this film goes, this man acted his ass off in this movie. And I truly mean this. I think Ryan Coogler writes his villains, or in this case, an anti-villain, anti-hero. He writes them better than sometimes the actual heroes, and you can see that when it comes to Namor. I'm telling y'all, I completely understand why Namor was taking the position he did, and you felt his anger and you felt his rage where it came from in regards to his to take on the surface land. And let me say this right now, when it comes to when we're introduced to Namor in this film, arguably the best introduction to any Marvel character. I'm talking villains, Thanos whooping the Hulk's ass, Captain America for the first time, Black Panther for the first time. The intro, that scene, some of the best I've ever seen in the MCU. It was haunting. It was terrifying. Like I said, the score that Chadwick gave him, it felt like it was like Godzilla. Like, it felt very similar to Godzilla coming on screen. That's how big and just menacing and scary and frightening he was when you first meet him. And throughout the film, you feel that too. Namor ain't no joke, y'all. And his fighting style was fantastic. The way he delivered his lines, he was charming, like I said, also frightening within the same scene. And he pulled off those feather feet, man. I didn't think they were going to be able to trail. I'm like, oh, that looks cool. But it looked pretty badass when you see it on screen. So I'm telling y'all, man, everything that came with Namor, I'm talking about Tenoch, almost damn near perfect. The costuming, again, they were scary. The chant that they do, it's frightening. It is frightening when you get to those elements. The look of the underground city was gorgeous. And shout out to Namora, I believe is her name, and Atuma. Everything with Namor in this film, minus some decisions later on in the third act, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Everything, again, was almost damn near perfect. He stole the movie for me. Namor was my MVP in this film. But let's talk about, of course, the other actors in this film. And I say he was my MVP. Second to that was Angela Bassett. But let's talk about the princess. I'm talking about the princess of Wakanda, Letitia Wright, who is tasked with a lot of emotional moments, and she had to carry a lot of rage in this film. And she gives us not only the rage, but she has range, man. We see a little bit more of the Shuri that we got from 2018, but the thing that I also liked about this is she's still very much intelligent, one of the most intelligent people in the MCU, and you see the maturity. We'll talk about the themes a little bit later as far as how losing what she's lost, brother, and things that go on in this film matures her. And I say all that to say it was a liking to what we saw, at least how I perceived it, Tom Holland in No Way Home, how what Peter lost in that film made him become Spider-Boy into Spider-Man. You see that in Letitia in this film. Like, again, going back to Black Panther, she's a teenager and just, what are those? You know, joking and all that. She had some serious moments, but you saw that more joyful, kiddish side in the first Black Panther. You get some of that in this film, but you get most of the maturity of Letitia Wright's performance in this particular role, and understandably so when you see the film, why she has to mature herself. So I do want to give her that praise, and we'll talk about some things that didn't work for me with her, but I do want to say that I thought that she did a pretty good job from what she was given, and we'll talk about her a little bit later. But pivoting over to the story and the themes, first and foremost, I just want to say that I did appreciate the honoring of Chadwick in this film, and the presence that they gave him in the film. It wasn't rushed, nor was it forgotten about throughout the movie. Like, they hint at it many times, how it's affecting not only the world and Wakanda, but more importantly, affecting his close ones, his loved ones, his friends, his, the warriors he fought beside with in battle. So I appreciated what they did with the loss of Chadwick. And I'll be honest with you all, I teared up. No shame in saying that, especially at the beginning of the film and the opening credit. And I just want to warn you all, bring the tissues, be prepared, unless you're, cold-hearted or whatnot. But what Chadwick meant to me, what T'Challa means to me, I got emotional. And I definitely, like I said, I appreciated what they did with the element. Even though I sit in the camp of recasting the character, I still can appreciate what they gave us with how they handled the legacy of Black Panther, T'Challa, and Chadwick Boseman. So pivoting over to that ties into the major themes of loss and grief that this film has to display, which even recently Ryan Coogler came out to say that was actually some of the intention in the script with Chadwick being alive, was to deal with grief, with him losing 5 years and being snapped by Thanos. So you can tell that those elements carried over to the rewrite of this film, and that's really heavily focused in this movie. Again, what does loss do to these characters? What do our characters do when they're grieving is a really big theme in this film, and you see how the film handles that with the main characters, what they're dealing with, and how some of them take it in a more positive way to moving on with grief, and how some of our other characters do the complete opposite. And we see the rage and we see the anger and what losing someone so close to them meant, and how it kind of takes them down this darker path. So I thought that the way that they handled that and the consuming of being angry and the anger grief, I thought that was handled pretty well in the film, which also brings it to just relatability. I've lost someone, the most important person in my life, and someone that I think about every single day, and the different ranges of emotions you go through. So I think we can all relate to losing someone close. If you haven't, unfortunately, that's part of life, is losing life itself. So I thought that aspect was very relatable in the film, which also just seeing the different perspectives of the leaders in this film and how important protecting your own mental the characters and what it means to come together and being an ally versus being an enemy, and what coming together looks like, and how you can accomplish so much more when working together. I found that to be a really good, strong theme, which also kind of the themes anchoring this film leads into the actual story without kind of giving too much of the plots of the film. But based on the trailer, you all get a sense of what we're getting into in this film, which are losing their protector of Wakanda is viewed as being vulnerable, and they must defend their own as Namor arrives and other outsiders attack them as well. And we see what makes this particular world so different from other projects in the MCU, like the political aspect of Wakanda and the conversations and the political implications to the greater world. So I just love what this particular franchise brings to Marvel. It's unlike any other franchise in the MCU, in my personal opinion. So I definitely thought that the story has some really strong beats, some other strong things that I wasn't a fan of. Kind of wrapping up my positives before we transition to my criticisms. With all that being said, the film is extremely entertaining at points. The action is some of the best you'll see in Phase 4. It's emotionally engaging and has some really great production value, and the performances deserves a lot of good praise. So let's get into my criticisms here, and I want to just say this and make this very clear. I'm a human being, and I completely understand how difficult it must have been to make this film. But now, after seeing it, I still believe, and I personally believe, that they should have delayed the movie and focused on the Wakanda series that they announced a couple years ago. The reason I say that is because going back to Ryan Coogler having to rewrite the story, and obviously adding in the unfortunate passing of Chadwick and understanding the situation, but I believe it personally created a somewhat messy and confusing at points and convoluted story here. Now, I'm going to give you all some examples. There are some questionable decisions that I can't believe that they did in this film, and some very underwhelming and uncooked ideas, and really the experience at points in this film was extremely disappointing. I'm going to give you all a couple examples without giving any spoilers here. I mentioned how there's some outsiders that are threatening Wakanda, and that's where Everett Ross' character plays into the narrative, and I found that whole plot to only serve as a setup for Phase 5. Now, again, when you see the Ross story, it somewhat fits into the narrative, but then it kind of just gets forgotten about. Like I said, it's mainly, to me, the only point of him being in the film, and all the stuff that was attached to Ross's character is only meant to serve the MCU, which, again, I know that's the MCU. I'm a fan of the MCU. I love the continuing story and things tying into each other, but sometimes it hurts the story because it feels like it was just meant for setup and nothing else. It didn't really serve the narrative that we're looking at in this film. So that was disappointing to me. Again, MCU, it can be a gift to see all our characters interacting, and this connects to that, and that means that for future on, but sometimes it's also a curse because it can be a detriment to the story that they're trying to tell in the individual narrative. So that element was underwhelming. Speaking of underwhelming, I have to bring up this character here. I didn't mention her earlier, but I want to say this. I'm a fan of Dominique Thorne. I've seen some of her projects recently. I think she's a great actress. I'm excited to see what we're going to get with her in the Riri Williams Ironheart series. And I'll say Riri Williams in this film reminded me a little bit of how they recruited Peter Parker in Civil War, and also, you know, her character. She's fun, she's exciting, she's extremely intelligent, and also, speaking of intelligence, they talk about the science bros with Tony Stark and Bruce Banner, but we get the science sisters with Shuri and Riri, and I love the bond that they have in this film. But I say that to say this. For me, the way she fits into the story felt like a rewrite. It felt like it didn't naturally fit into the story. And again, more focused on setting up her series more so than it did in this film. Now, she is very pivotal to the story in the first half. As we progress and we move on, she becomes an afterthought, and it becomes very underwhelming. And again, the idea makes sense, but the execution didn't pay off for me personally. So again, it's a gift and a curse with these MCU things, because they're always trying to be 10 steps ahead. They're always trying to think of the future while not just being in the present, and making sure that it fits cohesively throughout the duration of an almost 3-hour film. I didn't feel like it worked with that when it came to Riri. And even more so, going back to Riri, knowing that she has a story coming up and has her own series, oh man, the plot armor is as thick as vibranium. The plot armor that Riri has in this film is pretty frustrating. Now, I just say that. And again, it's no fault to the performance of Dominique Thorne. I just feel like the film thought that she was important, but then she wasn't later on as the film goes on. So as we get back into some other things, one note that I also want to bring up, again, I just want to make it apparent, I'm not blaming the actors. I love the supporting characters here. And I was under the impression that since we're not going to continue T'Challa, we're not going to have that story be involved, we were going to get more of M'Baku, Nakia, Okoye, and get more of the Wakanda world building. But to me, this film, you get just as much screen time, if not less screen time, with those elements in those characters. I again want to stress, it doesn't mean that they weren't good in the film. It's just that I really felt like they were in the film as much, and they were still just supporting characters. I looked at my phone at one point in the film, and particularly with Lupita Nyong'o as Nakia. She's not into the movie until an hour into the film. Other examples being M'Baku and Okoye are missing for chunks of the movie. And even I was so excited to see Michaela Coel be involved. She's barely in the movie. And Ayo is barely in the movie. So I'm like, wait a minute, isn't this a 3-hour film? We're supposed to allow these supporting characters to be more leading characters, but yet they feel, like I said, more supporting roles. And I honestly believe they have less screen time in this film than they do in the first one. And again, I repeat, it's almost 3 hours long. Again, goes back to the storytelling, how some of those pieces didn't really add up for me. And then the one thing I want to wrap up with here, and it kind of ties into, again, not blaming the actor, but blaming the storytelling and the direction here. There's this situation here where I felt, even though she's built as the lead of the film and she has the most screen time in the movie, I didn't feel like Letitia Wright felt like a lead in this film. She didn't have the gravitas nor the presence or the leading aspects to her to make her the star of this movie. And just looking at the conflict that she had with Namor in this film, I felt like the resolution just kind of felt very rushed and didn't really add up to me. And I didn't feel like it had a good payoff. And I'll just say this when it comes to certain things that they give Letitia Wright and Shuri, it didn't feel earned to me, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. Again, I'm not blaming the actor. I just feel like it developed well enough for my personal taste, which I kind of liken it to and compare it to, for any sports fans out there, you might understand what I'm referring to, almost as if you have a rookie that had a great first year, and then unfortunately your star player gets traded away or gets a injury and they can't play the whole season. So now the coach, being Ryan Coogler in this my scenario, and Letitia Wright being the rookie of the year, the coach wants the rookie year 2 to be the star of the team, to be the franchise player, and to lead this team into the championship. I didn't feel like she did that for me. To me, like I said, I just didn't feel like Letitia Wright was the lead of this movie to me. I didn't feel like she carried that weight for me personally. And the last thing I want to say, no spoilers, the film takes a lot of risks. Some of it works, some of it doesn't work, but there was a particular thing, and this has nothing to do with what you would think I'm referring to, and we're going to talk about this in spoilers probably in the coming days, but there's a point in this film that I was very upset with a decision they did, and I was confused as hell on why they did this and why they chose to do this and how it all played out. More to come to that in a spoiler discussion, but those are my main pros, those are my main cons. Before we wrap up this review and give you my score, my overall thoughts, thank you for sticking around to this point in the video. Again, just a reminder, if you're enjoying yourself, to thumbs up, share, comment, and of course subscribe. Overall, this film had to do the impossible. After suffering an extremely huge loss, I commend everyone for attempting their best, and when it was at its best, this film is thrilling. It's complex and layered and beautifully handles the many emotions that grief can bring, complemented with some of the best Marvel has to offer when it comes to great characters and performances. But I couldn't help but see the flaws in the story and the decisions and the ideas felt from ranges of being confused, undercooked, underwhelmed, and ultimately disappointed at a lot of aspects. I plan to see this film again, hopefully on Wednesday, but as I'm filming this today and how I feel right now, I feel like Black Panther 2018 is the better made film, and I don't have the same excitement to see this movie again. I don't have the same confidence as I did in 2018, and I feel like it was missing a lot. With all that said, it excels at, again, putting that question to its audience. What do you do when you lose someone so special to you, and how do you move forward? And I commend that, but again, the story and the decisions to me left a pretty disappointing type of feeling for me when I walked out of the theater. But with all that being said, I still compliment this film, and I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5, understanding what this franchise means to me, y'all. Listen, Thor: Love and Thunder, doesn't compare to this franchise. Doctor Strange, it's in the multiverse. Shang-Chi, Black Widow, all the stuff that we got in this new phase. There are standards when it comes to the Black Panther mythology and the lore and Ryan Coogler and all the people involved. So I hold it at a much higher standard. Again, even with my expectations, I left them to the door. And when I walked out of the door, like I said, I'm at a 3.5 out of 5. And I know some people are going to love this film, which, to each their own. I think that there are people that, of course, are going to be on the recast T'Challa train like I am, and other people that will be on that train but coming in with, oh, this is a woke, this is agenda, this is trash, and I don't sit with those people. Again, go in and make your own decision at the end of the day, and when you come out of the film, let me know your thoughts. I'm kind of mixed right now, and we'll talk about it a little bit further in a spoiler breakdown, but again, make your own decision, and when you do, let me know how you felt about the film. Again, pros, cons, favorite moments, least favorite moments, rankings of this film in the last phase 4 and the entirety of the MCU, which film that you prefer. I personally still stand behind recasting T'Challa, and we'll see where it goes after this. But, there it is, y'all. And if you do see the film, see it in the IMAX. It's definitely something to see, especially Namor and Telecon. That stuff is like, see it on the biggest screen possible when it comes to that element. But here we are, y'all. Again, a lot more discussions to be had. I plan on making a spoiler breakdown, really breaking down the film, what worked, what didn't work. I plan on doing some collaborations with some other great content creators, so keep an eye out for all that stuff. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you. If you're still here at this point in the review, do your boy a favor. Put hashtag Wakanda Forever, put hashtag recast T'Challa. So thank you all again for the support. Again, it's a reminder to like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell. Hope you all are staying safe. Hope you all had a good time. As you can see on the screen now, come and join the community. Check out my other Marvel content that I have on the channel. Check out my most recent breakdown, and we'll see you all on the next video.